Hi everybody, welcome to another Career Foundry live event where I am joined by Maureen, who is a product designer at Zalando, one of Europe's largest online retailers. And you may have seen Maureen in some of the Career Foundry videos that we have, and also runs under the name on Instagram, UX Collection, ux.collection. Definitely check that out. Today, Maureen is going to be talking about how to become a UX designer in 2022, which kind of follows on from some of the YouTube videos that Maureen's done for Career Foundry. So welcome everybody. If you just type in on the right-hand side where you're joining from, we love to see where everyone's joining from. We usually get a super international crowd. So just say hi and just tell us what you're interested in learning in. And remember, at the end, we're going to be doing a Q&A. So just drop your questions in the chat on the right-hand side, and we will get to all of those questions in the Q&A. I'll just talk very, very briefly about Career Foundry before we kick off and get into Maureen's presentation and whilst people are joining. Career Foundry is an online school, and we take people from absolute scratch and we teach them tech skills in UX design, UI design, web dev, data analytics, and we've just released also digital marketing as our main career change programs. On our main, hi everyone, Toronto, India, Amsterdam, London. I love it when everyone writes down where they're from. It makes it feel so real. Yep. So with all our career change programs, you get a mentor and a tutor, industry experts, and we've also got career specialists there to help you transition into your dream career in tech. So I don't want to steal Maureen's thunder. I'm sure Maureen's going to do a much better job of introducing herself, but also the presentation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disappear. I'll be in the background answering some questions, but any questions that you do have, just drop them in the Q&A or in the chat. And the webinar will also be recorded and we'll be sending around a recording afterwards. So without further ado, Maureen, I'm going to disappear and yeah, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, William, and welcome everyone. I'm really happy to see you all here. Today we're going to talk about a topic that I get a lot of questions about, and that is how to become a UX designer. Now, of course, in 1 hour, we can't talk about every step, but I've taken 7 very concrete steps that you can start with today, and that can help you kickstart that journey into UX. So William already introduced me. I studied with CareerFoundry in 2017, but now I work as a product designer at Zalando. That's a online platform for fashion. It's based in Berlin. And I also help people like you kickstart their UX journey on Instagram on UX Collection. And today I want to talk a little bit about what are the steps that you can take if you want to become a UX designer in 2022. And I know that there are so many online resources nowadays, so many articles telling you how to become a UX designer. And on the one hand, that's amazing because you have all of that content for free. But on the other hand, it can also become very overwhelming. So where do you start? I already had that in 2017 when there weren't that many articles and videos and schools online. But even then, I was already overwhelmed about all the things that I could learn and all the information. And I never knew what would be the right step. And it kind of paralyzed me. And I didn't really know how to continue. So, what I hope you take from today is that you feel motivated, that you feel like that first step is something that you can take away some of the hurdles. So that is also something that we will be looking at today. And now, when I talk with people about becoming a UX designer, oftentimes the conversations start with what kind of tool do I need to learn, or where do I find a job, or how do I build a portfolio? And those are all very relevant questions. But I would like to start much earlier than that. And I think the most important step that you have to take if you want to become a UX designer is to first ask yourself if UX design is actually for you. So that's the first step, and we're going to dive a little deeper into that. And after that, I'll talk about design methods and processes, about structuring your learning, what it takes to become a UX designer, how to learn the tools of the trade, how to network also, and then lastly, how to generate case studies for your portfolio. So let's first talk about, is UX design for you? Now, UX design is oftentimes portrayed as this holy grail and everyone should become a UX designer. And I hope that more people would be interested in UX design because it's a very exciting field. But UX design or a designer role is not the right fit for everyone. And that is also okay, because in the UX industry, we have many more roles than just design. So before you jump into looking at a course or creating case studies for your portfolio, the first thing that would really help also later on is to get an overview of your motivation. What do you hope to get out of a career in the UX industry? What is it that motivates you? What is it that speaks to you about UX? And what also really helps here is to learn about your strengths and weaknesses and have a very honest look on that, because UX design, just like any other profession, works well for some people, but it might not be the right fit for other people. And that is also totally okay. Because, like I said, there are more jobs in UX, so you might find out that maybe the design part is not a good fit for you, but maybe you could be a good UX writer or an engineer or a strategist or a UX manager or researcher. There are a lot of different focus areas or specialized roles within the UX industry. And now I don't really like to talk about what kind of personality you need to have as a UX designer, because there are many different designers with many different personality types. And I found that when I was doing this research and I got these lists from like 10 things every UX designer should be, or 10 personality traits that every UX designer should have, I found it very limiting, because sometimes you'll find that you might not have everything on the list. Does that mean that you're then not a good UX designer? I don't think so. I think you can still be a good UX designer. But to give you some kind of direction, I collected an overview of what I identified in the past years within my colleagues and also within myself as traits or habits or routines that really helped me become a good UX designer, and that I also identify in other colleagues that I see as good UX designers. But like I said, it's an incomplete overview. This is just something to get you started and kind of give you a feeling of, is this something for me? Is this something where I could imagine working in? So the first thing that I notice with all of my colleagues is that they are really good collaborators and communicators. And they have to be, because a big part of UX is communication, is working together with others. And you might think that as a designer, you spend a lot of time behind your computer and just like designing screens. And that is also an important part of UX. But what really drives our job is this communication with other teams, because we do have to have a lot of explanation to others, telling them the value of UX design, explaining how we work, making them enthusiastic for our practices. So being able to communicate well and enjoying that and working together with people from different backgrounds is something that really helps. Then what I found are also things like detail-oriented and analytical. And the reason why I put that on the list is because when you're working as a UX designer, you're oftentimes working in a complex problem space. And then it really helps if you can work well, when you can work into details, because you have to think of every kind of case that there is, and that you can find a solution for. So you also need to bring that analytical mindset and find information points from different sources and bring that together and derive insights from that. Then I've written down things like being empathetic, being structured, being proactive, because like I said already before, a big part of our job is still teaching others about design. And it really helps when you're proactive, when you reach out to others, when you are the one that takes initiative, because oftentimes people aren't really sure what UX designers do, or they're not really sure what they can ask from you. So you will have to reach out to them and show them what you can do for them or how you can work together. And then I've also written down some things that I see a lot in my day-to-day work, and that might give you a hint of if you would like the UX design role or not. So first of all, even when you're not a UX researcher, our job is still very research driven, which means that you will spend quite some time doing research or going through research insights. And that also is a lot of, it can be a pretty dry work in the sense that it's not very exciting. You're not building exciting new screens, but you're really digging through a lot of information. However, that is the foundation of our work. So that is also something that is good if you enjoy that. Something that I see a lot with non-design colleagues is that they find it difficult to deal with uncertainty. And that is certainly something that you have to feel comfortable with as a UX designer, because we're oftentimes not just finding their answer, we're rather even finding the problem, which means that oftentimes we don't really know what our users want, what they need, what their challenges are. We need to all figure that out. And that comes with a lot of chaos and uncertainty. And you have to feel comfortable in sticking out with that. And like I said here already, enjoying communication and collaboration, teaching and evangelizing UX, presenting ideas. A lot of UX work is also done through presentations, through showing others your work and getting feedback. And even if you don't feel comfortable with that yet, that is certainly something that you should then learn, or that you can also grow into. Now, when you thought about your motivations, if you could be a good fit for UX or not, and you've come to the conclusion that yes, UX design is actually something that you could imagine yourself working in, then it's time to take a deeper dive into what UX design exactly is, what the methods and the processes are that make up the toolkit of a UX designer. Now, there are many different articles and websites and whatnot that you can follow, that you can read through when it comes to the UX methods and the processes. I've linked all of them on the end of the presentation. For time's sake, I'm not going to go and dive deeper into that. You can do that on your own time. But what I want to give with you here is that it's not only important to look into the design methods and processes that are specific to UX design, but also realize that our discipline lives in a bigger context. When we're working in a company, we're not only doing what we want or working the way that we want to work, but we're working together with many different people. And then it also really helps when you understand that bigger context. And what I wish I learned earlier, and what I would really encourage you to do, is that you already start looking into product development frameworks. So how is it that a company develops software or apps? How do they build their products? And there are different ways of working, different frameworks that companies utilize to bring an idea out on the market. And for example, you can start looking into agile frameworks or waterfall frameworks. You will hear these two terms a lot when you start working in UX design, because those are two very known frameworks of how people build things and how they bring products onto the market. And apart from that, I would also, of course, familiarize yourself with design thinking processes, with methods that are linked to the design thinking process. And for that, I've taken this illustration from the website from IDEO. IDEO is an important company that played a big role into popularizing design thinking and bringing design thinking to the bigger audience. And they say that design thinking lives in the intersection of what is desirable viable and feasible. And that is exactly also the balance that a UX designer tries to find. So desirable, of course, is what we're building something that our customers or our users actually want. But finding out what your users want is not enough. You also have to make sure that what you build is in the end still profitable, that you can cover the cost, that it makes sense for the business to build something. And that is what we mean with viable. It's not something, not only something that we want, but can we also does it make sense for the company to build this? And then lastly, it's not only about do we want it as a user and a company, but also can we build it? And that's what we talk about when we talk about feasibility. So is this technologically possible, the solutions that we're thinking about? So that is the intersection of UX design. That's where UX design lives. And if you start thinking about becoming a UX designer, you will find this diagram or some kind of variant of it a lot more during your studies. And it's always good to keep that in the back of your mind because it teaches you the three areas that you need to focus on during your UX studies. On the one hand, desirability. So how can we find out what our users want and need? But also think about the business component and think about the technological component. Those are also very important when you're working as a UX designer. So when you have some kind of an idea of what UX design is and what the UX methods and processes are, it makes sense to structure that more because, as I said already before, there is so much information out there that you will need to create some kind of system for yourself where you can manage all that knowledge. Now, I'm explicitly saying manage because I don't believe that you can ever know everything there is about UX design. And that's also not necessary. I think it's way more important to know where you can find information rather than having all the information in your head. So you can, of course, structure your learning in many different ways. You have people that attend boot camps, online courses, that go to college, that are completely self-taught, and all of these routes are legitimate ways of becoming a UX designer. They all bring forth good UX designers. They also sometimes bring forth not so good UX designers, but either way, um, is a valid way. What is important is that you find something that fits you. And in order to find something that fits you, you have to know what your way of learning is. What's your learning style? Are you, for example, someone that really enjoys to work on their own, to learn on their own, to have a lot of focus time? Or do you enjoy learning in some kind of class setting together with other students? Do you like to learn at your own pace, or is it better for you if you follow a structure with a schedule? Are you someone that is more of a visual learner or an auditory learner? And of course, you have to also think about your time and budget because starting into a new career takes time and money. And you can do everything for free. Nowadays, there's so much information out there that if you want to, you could learn UX design completely for free. However, that would also take a lot of time because you have to research all of these resources. You have to build your own curriculum, structure everything on your own. So that will also mean that you have to bring a lot of discipline. And that is where an online course or where a bootcamp can help you because even though they can be quite a big investment, they take away that time aspect. They already have all kinds of information. They have a curriculum. They have structured learning with mentors. So if you have some money to spend, but you might be short on time, then an online course might be a good fit for you. Now, to talk about my own experience, of course, I'm not doing this webinar with CareerFoundry without reason. I'm doing that because I am a CareerFoundry alumni. So of course, I'm a little bit biased here. I think that taking an online course is a good way to go, at least for me. And the reason why I chose an online course is because I really wanted to have a curriculum. I wanted to know that the information that I was taking in was reliable, was trustworthy, was made by professionals. So that was the main reason why I wanted to take the course with CareerFoundry, to have that reliable information in one place. But what during my studies turned out to be a really big asset and something that really helped me was to have a mentor and a tutor with experience in the field that helped me with my tasks, my study progress. And here on the right, I've taken a screenshot that I just found today of my very first UX case study. It's pretty cool to look back on this and see where I started. And what I would do is I would create all of these exercises and send them to my tutor, who would give feedback on them and give hints on how I could do things better. And my mentor really helped me to talk about, like, how do you actually interview users? What are good tips and tricks? How can you ask for a right salary when you're going on a job hunt? So the mentor and the tutor really helped me to progress, not only in knowledge, but also in confidence. And then what I also found very good, especially because I took almost a year to study UX design, so that's a long time, is to have a lively student community that can keep you motivated. Because I do have to say that after almost a year of studying, I was so tired. I was working full time and then on top studying. And then it really is helpful when you have other people that are going through the same thing and that can just encourage you to not give up and just push it extra a little bit more. And for me personally, clarity and structure are very important things when I want to learn. That's the reason why I took an online course. But like I said, there are many different ways to become a UX designer, and it all depends on how you learn at your best. Now, we talked about UX methods and we talked about taking a course or doing it yourself or going to college. However, you structure your learning, the most important thing about becoming a UX designer is to practice as much as you can. And that also means that you have to take some time. It is totally okay to take a longer period of time to become a UX designer. I know that there is a lot of talk about becoming a UX designer in a month, in 3 months, but don't rush the process. It is totally okay. I mean, I took a year, like I said, and I think it really helps. All the time that you invest upfront in practicing your craft will pay you back later when you are going to create your portfolio and when you're going to apply for jobs. Because what people look for when you're looking for a job is not some shiny portfolio, but rather not only talk the talk, but do you have things to back it up? And that's the practice that you then have to showcase. So build your craft through practice, and this can be a bit difficult because it's not always as easy to find an internship. However, getting that first experience can also be seen as your first UX task. You are now studying UX, you know what it takes to understand the user's needs, to go from a problem statement to a solution. So take that process and apply it to finding experience. Who are the people that could need your help and what are they looking for and how could you contribute to that? So getting experience is really your first UX task, and building a portfolio is not a goal on its own. It's not about getting that portfolio done ASAP and getting case studies as soon as possible. Rather, a portfolio is an outcome of all the work that you've put in before. So where can you then find opportunities to practice your UX skills? First of all, you can work for charities, you can look up local businesses, and there are also hackathons that are focused on some kind of social questions. For example, when the pandemic just started, we had a lot of hackathons around how can you help local businesses digitalize? How can we reach out to all elderly people and help them get their groceries? So look for hackathons for charities that might need your help or that could really benefit from you turning their business into a digital business. Then what also really helps is to do some online design challenges. Again, I linked these challenges towards the end of the presentation, so you can check those out as well. And what's also really useful is just to keep your eyes open. Listen to what your friends or your family are going through. Do they have a problem that they keep on facing and they have no clue how to solve this? And that is actually how I got the idea for my first case study that I did on or with CareerFoundry, where I created a app that would help Berlin expats get connected with Berlin locals and that could help them get help to register at the do governmental tasks or register or get some paperwork done, because for the people that live in Germany and that are expats, you might know that bureaucracy in Germany is really difficult to navigate when you're a foreigner. So I had a lot of friends who said, oh, I wish I could just have a service that could do this for me, or I wish someone would just come with me to the Bürgeramt and help me register. And then I thought, maybe I can turn that idea into an app. So that's also how you can get inspiration. Then, of course, there are tools that we use as UX designers, and it is important that you learn these tools. However, I see a lot of discussions online of what is the best design tool. Do you have to take Figma or Sketch or Adobe? And if you ask me, I think all of them are good options because they're all pretty similar. You can do pretty much the same thing with all of these tools. Of course, they have some differences. They all have their own benefits and they also all have their own downsides. It doesn't matter really what tool you use. What matters is that you make a choice that you feel comfortable with. So if you happen to have some first experiences with Figma, then go on with that. And if you have absolutely no clue which one to pick, then it might also be worth it to do some research on LinkedIn and find job openings in your area for UX designers and see what kind of tools are mentioned there, because then you know that these are the tools that people are looking for in your area, and that can also really differ. So what I'm wanting to say here is don't sweat the tool. It's there to help you. It's not there to define you. So if you're comfortable with using Sketch or Adobe and you're like, oh no, everyone's using Figma, should I now also do that? You can, you don't have to. Because what's more important than the design tools is that you practice your soft skills. And I think that these hard skills, knowing how to use the design methods, processes, tools, that's important to get you started. But what is really gonna like kickstart your career and help you progress further are soft skills like presenting, articulating design decisions, active listening. That's a very, very important skill to have as a UX designer, because you have to take in what your users are telling you and turn that, and also what the business is telling you, and turn that into a solution. Leadership qualities are also very usable to have also when you don't aspire any management roles. So these kind of soft skills can also be very helpful. And again, if you don't have, if you find it difficult to find an internship, then find different opportunities to practice these skills, perhaps in a sports club or in other kind of activities that you're doing. You can also practice these soft skills there. Now, we're almost there. We have 2 steps left. This step is one that I found really daunting, and that is to network with other designers. And when I just started out in UX, I was thinking like, oh, I hate networking. I find it so awkward to go to meetups and stand in a corner and talk to people that I don't know. And I would already turn it into a nightmare even before I would attend the networking event. And still, I'm going to say this, it is really important to build a network, and it can and it will be fun. And you don't have to go to these awkward networking events if, just like me, you're a little bit shy around people that you don't know, and this is just going to be a hurdle for you, then don't go to these events. You don't have to. You can also build a network on your own terms. And my best tip to building a genuine network and building genuine connections that are beyond small talk and beyond selling yourself is to approach people with a giving mindset. So oftentimes what we think about networking is that we have to reach out to people with influence so that they can help us get something or get somewhere or get a job, or we want to take things from people. We want to have things that these people already have. But what makes it really easy and what makes it much more enjoyable to network is when you go out and you think not about what can I take from others, but what can I give others? What kind of experience, what kind of skills do I have that I can share with others and that they can learn from, and together we can learn. So that is something that really helped me to just like go out and share my experiences, and through just simply sharing what I'm going through, the challenges that I face, the lessons that I learned, is how I met so many people and really build a big network. So you can already start doing that today. If today is the day that you decide to become a UX designer, you can already start sharing your journey on social media, create an Instagram account or TikTok, or share on LinkedIn, and just share what you learn. Share your challenges, the questions that you have. And before you know it, you will have more and more peers seeing you and sharing their advice with you. And then, of course, what you can also do if you don't feel comfortable sharing your journey is to join online design communities. There are plenty on Slack, on Discord. Some are paid, others are free. Again, I linked all of them in the end of the presentation, so you can check them out. And you can also participate in any student community events. And that is also, of course, when you're taking a bootcamp or a course, then this is a very valuable thing that comes with the course or the bootcamp is this whole student community, and use that. Reach out to the people, go to their events and talk with them, because they can also give you advice on how they solved certain exercises or how they looked for a job. And then lastly, I already mentioned this also with Practise, is a good way to also keep up with the community and learn or get to know more people in your area, is to attend global design jams. Unfortunately, the global design jam was earlier this month, so you have to wait for another year or attend other online hackathons. There are many. You can just Google them. I think there every month there is some hackathon somewhere. And that's a great way to practice your skills, but also to meet others that are UX designers that are looking to become a UX designer. And this is also something that I did early on in my journey, is that I would go to jams and hackathons. And I actually met some of my best friends there. We're still in contact. We still help each other with career decisions, with questions. So that's also a great place to find friends. And that is also something that I would like to wrap this slide up with. Don't necessarily look for connections, but look for friends. See networking as an opportunity to make new friends. And if you're someone that's a bit more shy or more introverted and you don't feel comfortable going to new places, then start online and start a bit more anonymous and grow your confidence. And then maybe at some point you're like, okay, I would like to go to an event. So know that you can network on your own terms. And then lastly, we come to the step that most people start with, and that is generate some projects for your portfolio. And I put this step on the last step on purpose, and that is because it should be the last thing on your to-do list. I really hope that through these 7 steps that we now seen, that is something that you take from this presentation, that your portfolio is an important part, but it should not be the thing that you have to check mark immediately. I see this with many beginners that they rush into creating case studies as soon as possible without even really knowing why they take the steps they take, without really taking the time to master a craft. And so what happens is that they build a portfolio and it looks shiny. But when you ask them, okay, why did you create a persona? Or why did you have this user flow? Or what was your decision making? Why did you take design A and not design B? Then that's where they get a bit confused, because they think, okay, but that's the process that they taught me and I just have to follow this process and that's what I did. But that's not what UX design is about. These processes are there to help you, but not there as a law that you have to follow no matter what. What's way more important is that you learn how to articulate your design decisions, that you can really tell someone, I decided to create a persona because reason X, Y, or I chose this user flow because out of research, I found that this made most sense, or whatever. I think it's really important that you feel comfortable using these methods, because that will also make your portfolio of much higher quality. And one thing that could really help here, if you're at the start, but you already know, I would love to work in health or in fintech or in automotive or whatever, if you already know the industry that you'd like to work in, then focus the case studies that you're going to create on this industry, because that will make it easier for you to find a job. Of course, if you want to work at a fintech and you have a portfolio that has everything but fintech case studies, it's going to be hard for them to really understand what is it that you could bring into the company. So start thinking about that. However, if you have absolutely no clue, that is also totally fine. I also had no clue what kind of industry I wanted to work in. In that case, there are still ways that you can find to stand out in the market. And that is an important part if you want to look for a job, is to find ways to stand out in the market, to make yourself unique. And you can do that by, for example, reinterpreting case studies from boot camps. So if you are attending a boot camp or you're planning on attending a boot camp, then you'll find that many of these boot camps have standard case studies that they give to all the students to practice their skills with. What happens with that is that a lot of people that attended a bootcamp have the exact same portfolio because they did the exact same case study. So what you can do is to reinterpret that. And I already gave you some hints how you can do that. Look at charities, look at local businesses, ask around friends and family what kind of issues they have, and turn that case study into something that's a bit more personal. That also makes it way more easy to talk about it with passion. So make it more personal, but also you can also reach out to peers to do side projects with. For example, if you are very interested in, I don't know, when you use a lot of food delivery apps, perhaps you can find a peer to do a redesign of a food delivery app, or to do a competitor analysis on that, and really take what already is around you and use that as a learning opportunity. And all of these elements can then make up your portfolio in the end. Okay, so that was a lot of information. Let's just go to a quick little recap. And for that, I'm going to go back to the start. So what did we talk about today? We talked about first step, find out if UX design is the right fit for you. Then think about and practice practice UX design methods, processes. Then, of course, structure your learning, whether you do that with an online course or on your own, or you go to college, doesn't matter. What matters is that you find something that works for you. because, and that is step 4, you will have to practice a lot. Practice, practice, practice your methods, your tools, your skills. Learn the tools of the trade, but see them as something that helps you. So don't spend days researching what the best tool is. Take one that just speaks to you, take the one that you know, and try that out. If it doesn't work, try another one. All the design tools are pretty similar, like I said. And then what you can already start doing today, even when you're thinking, but I don't have any plan, I don't have anything yet, you can already start building your network. Today, create a LinkedIn account if you don't have one. Start sharing your work, or maybe even just start an Instagram account and post one thing that says, from today on, I'm going to become a UX designer and this is my journey. It's really easy. You don't have to overthink it. And lastly, generate some projects for your portfolio. You already have all the practice because you've done that up front. You have the network because you started with that today. And so when you're going to create your portfolio, you already have a few steps taken. The portfolio will be something that is just an outcome, and this will really kickstart the job hunt and will make it much easier to then later on find a job in UX. Okay, that's a lot of talking from my side. Now I'm gonna ask William if there are some questions, and perhaps we can look at some of the questions that you have. William, I can't hear you. I think you're still on mute.
Oh no, can you hear me now? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks again for the presentation. I just think that provided a fantastic 7-step concrete plan for anyone starting their journey in UX design. We're also streaming this webinar on YouTube, so we are going to take questions now. I know there are quite a few questions already, and we will try and get through as many as possible. I will just start off with a couple of YouTube questions that are coming in. First one, quitting a job and joining a boot camp. Can this be a good idea?
Well, I find it very hard to answer that question for this person. I think that really depends on, do you have the time and the money to dedicate your full-time studies? If that is something that you can do, then go for it. For me personally, that was not possible, so I had to keep my job while studying UX, and that also worked out because now I'm working as a UX designer. But if you can dedicate your time full-time, then yeah, go for it. Yeah, I find it hard to answer that question for someone.
Sometimes it's a little bit difficult without context, but we will move on. Another question on YouTube is, what would be the 3 things that UX newbies should master first? For instance, research, working on communication.
I think what would be really helpful is if you first look into the design thinking process. And I know that there are some controversial opinions on this in the UX industry. Some professionals say that you shouldn't follow the design thinking process. I think still that it is a great place to start, because when you learn that process, you will also learn all the methods and skills that are needed with each phase. So I would start with learning about the design thinking process and the methods. And then what I think is really helpful is when you already start learning about the business side of things. So there is one podcast that is made that for designers, and it teaches designers about business. It's called D.MBA podcast. That is a great place to start learning more about business. Also learn about, like I said, these product development frameworks. So what does agile mean? What is a waterfall framework? What does that mean? So that you really understand how UX design lives in a bigger context. And when we talk about soft skills that you can already start practicing, I would say collaboration and communication. Those are important soft skills to have.
Awesome. Another question. Thanks, Maureen, for the great session. Do you have any recommendations for portfolio building sites?
Oh, well, there are many sites, but I think if you don't feel very comfortable with all these website builders, because they can be quite complex, a great way to start is Notion. I also created my portfolio in Notion, and I actually have a portfolio template on Notion. And now I'm going to try to live find this link really fast. But in the meantime, I can already tell you that we also did a video on Notion over at the YouTube channel from CareerFoundry, where we show you how to use Notion on your own UX journey. So that is something that I would definitely recommend you use. And I'll share the link in the chat here, and perhaps you can also share it on YouTube. I don't know, not entirely sure how that works. But that template is something that you can already use to build your portfolio, and Notion is really super, super simple. So I think that's a great place to start.
Didn't you recently just do a video on Notion on YouTube as well?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm taking a couple of questions from Big Marker now on the Q&A side, and sorry if I pronounce anyone's name wrong, but Ace is asking, when did you understand or know your UX direction?
Oh, I didn't know that in the beginning, because when I started studying on CareerFoundry, I was actually set on becoming a UI designer, because I was always very interested in graphic design. I also studied illustration. I wanted to become a graphic designer. So I thought, okay, probably UI design is something that is more of my interest. But while I was studying, I learned that I actually like the UX part way better. And now that I'm working as a UX designer, I'm learning that I like the strategic part of design the most. So I think throughout learning, you will find your direction. If you don't know that yet, that is totally fine, because it will come with the more knowledge and the more practice that you get.
Definitely, and it would also be worth noting with the CareerFoundry UX design program, as part of the program, there is also a specialization. So you can also get a taster, and you will become equipped in doing some UI design as part of the program. If you choose to do that, there are other options too. Jason on Big Market is asking a good question, I think. Jason's wife is interested in learning UX design, but has no previous background or technical background. Can this be something for her to get into?
Definitely. I think there are many people that change their careers from something completely different into UX design. And I actually think that no matter what your background is, even if you didn't work in tech, you will always find things that are super valuable during your transition into UX design. So, for example, I studied art history, which you might think has nothing to do with UX design, but still there is a lot that I've learned there that I'm still using today. And the same with my illustration studies. I learned how to draw comics, and that skill actually helps me to create user flows and to create wireframes. So you will always find that your skills are transferable. So I wouldn't worry about that.
I think the next YouTube video we should do, Maureen, should be comic drawings too.
Storyboarding for UX designers.
Storyboarding, exactly. We love a bit of that. I'm taking another question over on YouTube. Do you find that you have more freedom and a better work-life balance now that you've become a UX designer? And that's from Aryo.
Oh, I find that hard to say, because I changed my career pretty early on in my career. So before that, I worked at a startup in marketing, and that was more stressful than my work now. But I think that's also because it was a startup, and I don't work in a startup anymore. Startups are, yeah, they take a lot of time, because you building something up from scratch. So that might take more time from employees. So I would say I have a very good work-life balance. I'm not sure if that's only because I'm a UX designer, or if that's also because work-life balance is very important to me. So I watch out for keeping that balance.
Another question here from Yewanda is, are companies open to hiring UX designers from different countries?
What I can say is I can, of course, only talk about the company that I work in, which is Zalando. And yes, they are open to hiring UX designers from other countries. In fact, they do that a lot. I have a lot of international colleagues. So at Zalando, at least, I know that they are open to that.
And it's also the same at CareerFoundry. We have UX designers working who are from outside Europe and North America. So definitely it is an option. And also I think now with remote work, there's probably even more options. I'm just kind of scrolling through here. Is it necessary to be creative to be a UX designer? If so, then how do you unlock your creativity?
I think with creative, people oftentimes mean artistic. So do you have to be good at drawing, for example, to become a UX designer? The answer to that is no. You don't have to be good at drawing. Do you have to be creative? I would say UX design is a very creative job in the sense that you are finding new solutions to problems. You're defining problem statements, you're finding solutions to that, and that is a very creative practice. So in that sense, I would say yes, but I also think you can learn how to become creative. So if you think you're not creative right now, then first of all, I don't know if that's true. You might be very creative, just maybe not artistic. But yeah, you can learn that along the way, I think.
Definitely, that's great advice. Another question from YouTube, a slightly nuanced question, I think, but do you feel that due to low UX maturity in many companies and newbies entering the industry with fear of stepping on any toes, that UX design is slowly losing its integrity and focus on user advocacy?
Well, that's a very long question. Okay, so I feel like there are multiple questions in that one. So to reiterate, low maturity and UX beginners, if the existing industry is worried about stepping on someone's toes. Wait, could you repeat that question again?
Yeah. So, do you feel that due to low UX maturity in many companies, so that there's it's not been around for so long, or there's been lots of newbies entering the industry, that UX is slowly losing its integrity and focus on user advocacy?
I feel like these two are not connected to each other. So I do think that it is important for our industry as we progress and as more people are entering the industry that we keep or that we start with some kind of quality standard. And I think that that is something that we definitely can do better on to establish quality standards of UX for UX designers. But I don't think that low maturity in companies are connected to user advocacy. So I think that yes, there is a big part of our job that is focused on teaching our colleagues the value of design. So I'm not focusing 100% of my time on pure UX work, whatever that means, because there are many different things that we do. I do spend quite a lot of time on evangelizing UX, but I think that's part of my job. And you can still advocate for users while doing that. I hope I answered that question in some way that makes sense, because I find it very hard to really understand the question. So I hope that this somehow makes sense.
Maureen, I'm literally just picking the hardest questions this evening.
This feels like a test.
This is actually just turned into a test. But I think there's a good question on Big Marky here in the chat section. Luciana is asking, I've seen some portfolios which are super detailed, which have maybe too much text, and others that are simple and cute. Which do you recommend?
Something in the middle. So if you have a portfolio that's like a novel, then no one's gonna read that, because recruiters don't have an hour time to read through all your case studies. However, if you have a portfolio that's only images, then people don't know what your thought process is, what your decision-making process was, what questions you had, what challenges you had, what problems you were trying to solve. So ideally, you would have a portfolio that has a good mix of visuals to attract people and to keep them engaged with your content, and then text to explain what we're looking at.
Definitely. I think some PhD students who may be watching just shed a silent tear because they haven't got any images in PhD. But it would be worthwhile saying here that all of the CareerFoundry career change programs, the key takeaway is the portfolio, and that is something that you'll present to employers when you go for the job interviews, and they're fully supported by the career services team that we have here. So remember, when you go into those interviews, you will have your portfolio in front of you, and you'll be able to talk your way right through the portfolio step by step because you've created the whole thing. So this is the key takeaway from the CareerFoundry career change programs. In a follow-up question, Hetel is asking, is it compulsory to add case studies to the portfolios?
Well, I would say the case studies are oftentimes what makes the portfolio. So the case studies are the articles or the contents of the presentation of your project. So I wouldn't know how a portfolio would look like without case studies.
I think you mentioned an important point earlier as well, that pursuing your own case studies and choosing real world. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Sorry, just froze. No, choosing, asking your family and friends, or maybe some business partners if they've got any problems, to find. I think that was really good advice to kind of make a real world kind of case study. Another question, I think it was a good question, is Omega, because Omega is asking, is product design the same as UI/UX design?
There are a lot of different opinions on that. So there are a lot of different people who try to define or explain the differences between product design, UX design, UI design, service design. Personally, but this is just my opinion, I don't see many differences when it comes to working as a product designer or as a UX designer or as a service designer, because I worked as a UX designer, then as a service designer, and now as a product designer. And down the line, the things that I do are the same. It's just that the job titles are different, and sure, every company might have a little bit of a different role expectation or responsibilities, but I find that there might be differences between them. To me, they are arbitrary, but I'm 100% sure that when you Google that question, you will have people disagreeing with me or having a different opinion.
One question that's come in is about salaries, and I suppose it's kind of the elephant in the room, but do you think it's also kind of a lucrative career pathway to be a UX designer, or can you expect, if you're, in terms of like the job market, I don't know, we're looking at the Berlin market, but also in America, is it a good career to pursue in terms of salaries?
So I only ever worked in Berlin, so I can only talk about Berlin. But I would say that in Berlin, working as a UX designer is a very good choice when it comes to salary compensation. It's a very lucrative job. Having said that, I think money, of course, always is nice if you have a good paying job. It shouldn't be the main motivator, especially not when you're now looking into getting into the market, because there are many juniors trying to find a job. So if you're not passionate about what you're going to do, it's going to be very hard to keep up with those that are passionate. And so it's also going to be very hard to find a high paying job. But to answer the question, yes, I find it is a very lucrative job.
Thanks for answering that. And can one become both a UX and a UI designer at the same time?
Yes, you can actually. And to come back to that question of what's the difference between product and UX and UI. So I find that a lot of people that have the job title product designer or call themselves product designers are people that have focus on both UX and UI. So you definitely have people that do both. You have many people that are then either like UX or UI is their strong suit and the other part might not be as developed, but it's totally possible to become a UX UI designer.
We've had quite a few people ask about CareerFoundry portfolios and case studies. If you go on the CareerFoundry website and go to the UX design program and scroll down, you can find success stories from previous students and graduates where we showcase different portfolios, and you can also get an idea of some of the case studies that CareerFoundry students do. So I would recommend doing that. Maureen, there are incredible amount of questions, but I'm also mindful of the time and that we have got a kind of a slotted time this evening. Thank you everybody for joining this evening. Thank you, Maureen. I think a 7-step kind of action plan to becoming a UX designer is something that everybody can follow along with. Anybody in the audience who is interested in UX design and does have any questions specifically related to the program, I would definitely recommend booking a call with a program advisor. They know all about the CareerFoundry curriculum, the dual mentorship model that we offer, but we also offer a job guarantee for peace of mind. So all you have to do to book a call is simply click the yellow sticky note at the top there. And currently we are also offering a CareerFoundry Women in Tech scholarship. As we know, women are underrepresented in the tech industry and often face social and systemic barriers that are only intensified by the pandemic that we've been experiencing. So we are offering a Women in Tech scholarship at the moment. So if you are interested in that, please just click and talk to our program advisors about that. Aside from that, I will be sending around an email tomorrow with all the links and the recording. As you can see, I think Maureen's just switched over to the resources here. These are the ones which have been shared. And thanks, Maureen, for putting those together. I would recommend also checking out the CareerFoundry blog. There's lots of articles there, some specific, but also some if you're thinking about just taking your first steps in UX design. And also, if you want to see Maureen in action, Maureen's done quite a few videos on the CareerFoundry YouTube channel, and there are some other familiar faces there too. So, Maureen, that was a big mouthful. Thank you so much for taking the time this evening to speak to everybody. And I wish everybody in the crowd, thanks for your questions, and have a wonderful evening or morning or lunch, wherever you may be joining from.
Thank you so much, everyone. Also, thank you so much for all the questions. I always feel sorry that we cannot answer every question, but I think you drilled me well enough, Will, with the questions tonight. I hope I passed the test.
I'm trying. I'm making it progressively harder. Already.
The one with the low maturity, that one was really like taking all my brains. I was like, what is the question exactly?
These are just my private questions that I've got behind the.
Yeah, exactly.
Alrighty. Thank you, everybody, and see you next time. End the webinar.